Hey everyone, how's it going today? Thanks for joining me as always. Totally appreciate it. Let me turn this mic down to here. Okay, so let's talk about Open G tuning today. So, well, first of all, hope everybody's doing well. Got my air conditioner on. It's got super hot in my place, so it's one of those in the window ones. So if you hear a little noise in the background, that's what it is. I apologize. Okay, so Open G tuning. I'm gonna play a little bit, and then we're gonna talk about it. All right, you guys get the idea on that. So how's everybody doing? All right, let's do some talking. Okay, so yeah, that's very Stonesy, obviously, right? So let's talk about how we get to Open G tuning, which is really, really, really important because we want to be able to comfortably do that when we are, on a gig. So if I go from standard tuning, the notes of a G chord are G, B, and D. So what we're tuning the guitar to is D, G, D, G, B, and D. So this is basically, it's just a big open G chord with a D in the bass. So I'm going to go to standard tuning just for a sec, guys. Roughly. Close. Okay. So, kind of an open standard tuning here. The first thing we're going to do is how we get to that open G tuning. And a really great way, obviously, is with your tuner. That's one way. But you can also drop down your low E string to match your D string. Or you tune your low E string till it matches your D. drop D stuff. Now I'm going to take my A string and match it to my G string. Okay, so now I'm going to take my high E string and bring that down to D as well. Right, so now, might be a little out of tune because the neck resettles, right? If you think about that, the tensions change. So if you're on a gig, I'm using my tuner right now. If you're on a gig, you can get there pretty quickly, but the neck will move a little bit, depending on how rigid the neck is. And so that's something to think about. Also, the guitar isn't necessarily intonated for open G tuning, so sometimes you got to just kind of fine tune it a bit. All right? So, so if I strum it, I have an open G chord. Now, Keith Richards would remove the low E string so he wouldn't hit it, right? So he kind of fills that up so he wouldn't hit it. This isn't stage, would just get in the way. So you see Keith Richards playing a 5-string because he primarily, at this point, I think he almost solely plays in open G tuning. I'm pretty sure about that. Okay, so here's the cool thing. Let's just talk about a 1-4-5, and this is a lot of the Stone stuff, and I'm going to talk about a lot of blues tunes that use this. There's 3 sort of essential Stonesy open G fingerings, right? We have 1, which would be our open chord. So like I said, that's this, right? That's G. I'm gonna bring it up the octave, right? And then I'm gonna play this, which is like a C chord with a G in the bass. But if you look at it, it almost looks like an A minor 7 chord, right? So that's one of the big sounds, this. And the other fingering, let's call it fingering number 3. I'm going to drop the 3rd finger towards the floor and get this kind of cool sus sound. Right, so we have this. So that's, you heard millions of tunes, like Black Crowes, well, anything that's kind of Stonesy, honestly. So here, right off the bat, Brown Sugar starts off like that. So I have this open G, and I go this G with C in the bass, and I don't even hear it as that, I just hear it as like a G thing, right? It's just something we can play on G. And we can do that open. So in my vamp, I just played basically a blues, so I'm thinking about right? Just kind of letting that ring. Now with my 4 chord, since the guitar is tuned down, your 5th string is tuned down a half step. You've retuned the guitar. And what helps a lot with, what open tuning helps a lot with, is you can play with 1 finger, right? So if we think about a C chord would be this, that would be our 4 chord in a G blues. So we're gonna bring up, since we brought down that 5th string down a whole step to have its fret to sound like a C, we have to bring it up a whole step. So there's a C chord, and there's your 4 chord. That's a C chord right now. So 1, 4, and all those moves work. Now my 5 chord, that's going to be a D chord, so it would look like this normally in regular guitar tuning. Since we're in open G, it'll look like that. Right, so those are the big moves for Keith. So let me just kind of mess around with that again on that track. Let's get that back here. Okay, so I kind of messed around with some of those shapes when I was down here in my open G. Even on the 1 chord, I'm just sitting on that. Then I went to those notes. So, like I said, we can start to come up with names for them. It's G major, G with C in the bass, or C with G in the bass, excuse me. And this I would see as maybe like sus2, is it sus4 sort of sound? I know, I could be wrong. Whatever. You know, Keith ain't calling it that. It's that sound. Okay? So that's the main thing. If you start listening to a ton of Stones tune, of course, if I played any of them for you, I would get maybe, I don't care if I get demonetized, but I don't want them to give me pull the video. I don't know how much of a stickler the Stones are for performing their stuff. But if you just listen, right, I was messing around. You got the... Right, you're hearing that sound all over the place. And very often, saying something like Tumbling Dice, you have that capo. Right? Pretty cool. So when I learned that the Stone stuff was an open G at one point and learned the tuning and then learned a few of those little fingering ideas, I was like, oh my God, that's like a large portion of the catalog. And they're one of my favorite bands, so I don't mean that in any kind of, dismissive way. It's amazing. So the other one okay, let's add a fourth. You hear that and can you hear you knocking? Can't you hear me knocking? Right? And what's cool, and Keith Richards calls it the electric auto harp. So meaning he can just throw down these shapes and these fingerings, and he's got all these great tunes. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Jumping Jack Flash was originally open E tuning, but they moved it to open G. And the story is Cooder introduced him to a lot of the open tuning sounds. So, now one other move you're going to see a lot. That's a cool lick. I think that's like the Black Crowes kind of have that line there. Now the great thing about, and I saw somebody mention it, I think it was here or maybe on a YouTube or Instagram post. What's nice about open G tuning, where you don't have to relearn the whole guitar, is the D, G, and the B strings are the same, right? So, if you want to play those chords, like there's C, say if you have a D minor chord, there it is right there. You just don't, make sure you don't bar, but you can play other chords because the D, G, and B strings are the same, okay? Excuse me. Jesus Just Left Chicago by ZZ Top is actually in what we call a cross tuning, where he tunes the G and the E down to, the A and the E down to G and D and leaves the high E string the same. On the recording, not live. So we can do this kind of... Right? All the same stuff. So this is really common for like that rock and roll open G sound. All right, so this little sliding move. Now, let's just stick to rock stuff for a minute. There's so many people who write in open G. It's a very common tuning. That's the Way by Zeppelin is an open F. So it's open G tuning, if I remember right, but they tune it down a whole step. So to me, it's the same tuning. So that's a great one. This kind of move like that. Going to California. Fearless by Pink Floyd. That's open G. Somebody asked us, Joni Mitchell, for sure. I mean, she did all sorts of different open tunings. But the other one that's really big is Delta Blues, or a lot of blues tunes. So if we were to play a little bit of slide on it, this isn't set up for slide, but... that blue story. Long Distance Call by Muddy Waters, you know. That can't be satisfied. It's been a while. Right, so that sounds are a little rusty on that. Didn't expect to play that. So the reason why it works so great with slide guitar is because you can bar with one finger, right? That kind of stuff. Now Robert Johnson, a lot of tunes of his were that way as well. So in the Delta stuff, and I did a little bit on the track for the Stonesy thing. Here's a G. Here's G7. So here's a big G. Right, so there's a G7 chord. So if you think about the Delta bluesy stuff. Okay, so in a future lesson, I'll talk about some of the Delta blues stuff, because that's a whole other bag of tricks that we can start to talk about. But if you go back to the rock and roll sort of things, open G is really cool for a number of reasons. One, it gives you that sound. If you want to write something Stonesy, that's what it's going to sound like. I believe is it Baby I Love Your Way by Frampton? That's open G. There's a lot of open G tunes that aren't bluesy Stones tunes. So what's nice about being in open G tuning, if you're playing with another guitar player and you're playing something, say, in G, the other guitar player can be in standard tuning and you could be in open tuning, and you get these different sounds. Now, you can get that on a regular, those D, G, and B strings, but it doesn't have the same sound, does it? If I just go, right, this is different. And then you can get the boogie woogie thing on this. Right. Right, so this boogie woogie thing just falls in nice and easily. And so in the chord. Right, you know, of course it could all be the, you know, that whole thing. So most slide playing that you hear, not all of it, like Warren Haynes plays in standard tuning, Jeff Beck plays slide in standard tuning. But they're not doing that sound as much, right? That kind of George Thorogood or Muddy Waters or Elmore James, who would play an open D tuning, things like that. So open G tuning and the Delta stuff with a lot of Robert Johnson tunes, Son House, Muddy Waters, Willie Brown, Blind Boy Fuller would sometimes play in it. So, you know, it's cool. There's a name for the tuning. Is it Vestipole tuning? Somebody can correct me. There was a name that people used to call it. I don't know if standard tuning is Spanish tuning. And I think this is called Vestipole tuning, if I'm not mistaken. That was one of the names for it. But I could be wrong. It's been a while. I should have checked out my notes ahead of time. Okay, so now a few other little doodads you can throw in. I can throw in my third finger on top. Now, This is one of the beautiful things about open tunings, that you have the idea of drone strings, right? So a common thing that you can work on to help you out with that, I'm going to play the open G chord, and I'm going to play basically what looks like an A minor 7 chord. I'm going to have the E note and the C note, because those are actually still E notes in C. And I'm going to take them through the key of G major. They're 6. Try that again and play it properly. Kind of like going to California in that, right? That's the way, right? Yeah. Kind of like Fearless by Pink Floyd, if I remember right. But this move, so sometimes if I want to write a tune, I'll go to an open tuning to see maybe where it leads me. I was fortunate enough to be kind of friendly with Chris Whitley for a while. Obviously, he's passed away. And I was talking to Chris about open tunings. He had the craziest open tunings. And he would basically just tune the guitar to anything that sounded cool and write a song around it. So it was pretty interesting. He had lots of different open tunings. For me, his approach to the guitar is very different than mine. It was not an educated approach. So for him, it was this creative thing of making these tunings and then just writing stuff around it. So that was a very different approach, but they have very specific sounds. Joni Mitchell does the same thing, as I said. So here you go. That's like a crash course on the rock and roll bluesy stone sort of stuff. Don't forget, fingering number 1, fingering number 2, fingering number 3, and maybe fingering number 4, which you also hear in Give Me Shelter. So, right? I mean, you hear Happy in there, one of my favorite Stones tunes, Capo. Okay, the other giveaways, guys, you should look for is if you're trying to figure a tune out and you're going, okay, and I mean this with the most respect because I love Keith Richards and I love the Stones, but Keith is a great guitar player, he's a great stylist, but he's not a great, technician, right? He's not, if you take up guys from there, he's not Clapton or Beck or something like that. So sometimes when I was learning it, I'm like, why is this so hard? Then you watch videos of him, he's just got the one finger and he's moving around. And then I finally figured out, oh, yeah, it's open tuning. Of course it is. So if you hear a song and you hear a lot of drone strings, like this kind of thing, well, you hear notes, you're like, how is he stretching that wild stretch over here? Tuning. Not obviously, but very often in a different tuning. And of course, with the internet, it's much easier than when I was younger, before the internet, when I had to kind of suss this out. And I remember it was a Guitar Player article with Keith Richards on the cover, and they started talking about open G tuning. I was like, what is open G tuning? Like, I had no clue what it was. And then I was like, discovered, I was like, wow, and I figured like that was those Zeppelin tunes and all these other things too. So, okay, there's your crash course on open G. As I was quickly saying, you can do it with the tuner, but sometimes when you do it with the tuner, it sounds a little bit out of tune because the guitar is not perfectly tempered for the open tuning. So sometimes you have to finish it off by ear, right? You might strum that open chord and go, or you go here. I mean, I've got it in tune pretty well, but sometimes with the tuner it might be a little off, and so you have to fine tune it. Once again, if you go from standard tuning to open tuning, I would go for a guitar with a fixed bridge, like a Tele or a Les Paul or something that does not have a floating tremolo, or else you're in a lot of trouble. If I'm going to play slide, I have 10s on this guitar, and some of them are tuned down, so it's pretty messy for slide for me. Usually like a heavier gauge string. So when we talk about the Delta stuff a little bit later, the crash course on those things, that would be that's a good way to look to check it out. No, what I'm saying is, I lost my train of thought. Really light strings and slide guitar can be really tricky. right? You know, because you're just banging the slide into the frets and using the right weight slide. When we do a slide lesson, I'll talk about the crash course in that. But also, if it sounds like you're an open G, or it's A, so it sounds like it's an A, so there's open G and open A are the same thing, just tuned up a whole step. This is where the capo is really your friend, because you might go, well, I don't want to keep on changing this stuff. So I can go to, like, you know, yeah. Right, so if you're hearing those open strings, like, you know, shake your hips, you're hearing that, like, you know. Sorry, turn it up. You know, and you're like, how's that chord ringing out? It's A. How's he doing that? Capo, somewhere. Also, like I said, the Stones tunes, Happy, Tumbling Dice, capo, doing largely the same kind of stuff. Okay, cool. Who else? Of course, anybody playing slide, Bonnie Raitt open tuning, Lowell George open tuning, Sonny Landreth open tuning. I know Sonny personally, he's probably the great guy. Open A and open G. He brings a few guitars on the road with him because of the different string gauges. I think Derek Trucks, if I'm not mistaken, primarily sticks to like an open D tuning, but they're just different sounds. And when we get to open D, we'll hear some tunes that are open D, but open G, for me, it's the Stones. Okay, let's see if we have any questions. Go through the roll call of everyone down here. Okay, I want to address, Richard, I know you're, and Sarah, you have given me about the intro music. Here is a technical reason why I have the intro music. One, I'd like to introduce you to some of my music. It also helps me when I do the live stream to make sure that the feed's going okay. That's really important, because you know within the first few minutes if the stream, if there's something going to go wrong. So it's really helpful for that. Also, and I learned this from some other people, is that you get the alert that I'm on live. And if you notice, if I look at the numbers, it usually, a lot of people miss the intro because they just got the alert and they came on late. So the intro music, which hopefully you will like my music, serves a few purposes. Mainly for me, it's about making sure that the stream is going to work okay. Because you never know until you hit go live. And that's, as you guys notice, sometimes I've done ones and everything's fine, because it has a fake stream that says everything looks good, but it's totally different when you hit the live button. Suddenly, that's when things go haywire. So the music in the intro gives me a chance to, if I can adjust any parameters that need adjusting, that's one of the main reasons. And on a rewatch, you just scroll through it. So I want to address that, but I understand. A few other people said it to me too, like, oh, I have to watch this on the second time I watch it. And I'm like, well, you can flip through it. Okay, Steve Moore, what's up, everybody? Joe Burnett, when is Jeff's next TrueFire course going to be released? I don't really know. It's probably going to be within the next month or two. I did 3 beginning blues courses, 1 total beginner blues, part 1 and part 2, and total beginning soloing, part 1. And we'll get to a part 2. And this is to connect my catalog of TrueFire courses. And what I've heard a lot from you guys is most of your stuff is kind of intermediate to more advanced. And there's nothing for me that's kind of easy enough. So we worked really hard to make sure that we could get someone who's like been playing for a bit, but just really getting the foundations and the fundamental ideas of playing like a blues boogie, and some variations in the patterns, and then we run through it slowly, and then we run through it with a band, and then TrueFire's got these great tools where you can speed up the track and slow it down. So I kind of give you tips as we go along, like this is what you want to do, this is how you can mix and match them, so really firming that up. And what I found from a lot of people take the private lessons with me, and say, okay, that's great, let's just play through a blues, and they might have some soloing stuff together, maybe, or not. Almost always across the board, everybody has a hard time playing through a blues more than once or twice, or even once. Some people just mess it up. So we think we know it, and there's a lot of hubris when it comes to the blues, myself included. And I had if you watch this show regularly, I've had my butt handed to me by traditional blues guys by not being true enough to the music or, things like that. So being able to just lay down a blues and it's the level playing field when you're playing. So that's what the course is going to be about. They should be coming out relatively soon, a month or two, but you will know all about it. I will let all of you know. All right, Steve Moore, Chris Dice Art, Tim Ferriss, I hope you got your 30 minutes worth. I know it was worth a lot of money. I know you paid for it. Midi Man, what's going on? Stephen Ellis, Quincy, Thomas Ross, David Cromwell, My Knees Hurt, Richard and Sarah, of course. And Richard, did you do the top chat? Who was that? Rich Irby. Okay, thank you for the top chat. I really appreciate that. Off topic, but since we're both here, me and Keith, did anyone document the origin amp settings on the on the Beano budget? Yeah, I have the amp right over here. I kind of had everything at noon. The trick on that amp, just to answer your question, there's that kind of tilt knob. I had that down much more, probably about, I would say about like 9 o'clock. Okay, and there's tilt is like an overall tone knob on the amplifier. I had it down kind of low. That's part of the sound. If it's too bright, it doesn't sound like that era to me. So started everything at noon. I had the boost up. I didn't have the gain on full, but I had that tilt knob, which is kind of like the treble or overall tone knob of the amplifier. I had it, try that lower. Okay, hopefully that helps. I don't remember exactly what I had everything at, but the cool thing about the Marshall stuff is like the tone knobs are not super active. So I would start with everything right at the middle. And I had the boost on, and that tilt knob is a little lower down. So hopefully that helps. And thank you so much, Rich. I appreciate that. Okay, let me get down to the bottom. Got some more questions. Right. All right. Sorry, I'm just looking through the questions here. More examples I can give in Delta Blues. Yeah, like I said, I'll do a feed on the Delta Blues. I'll get my National hooked up, which is much more fun to play, and the proper guitar to play. I play better, that stuff on there better. 5 Watt World, what's up? Keith, how you doing? Keith, you guys see the one that Keith's Martin history with Corey Congelia? It was awesome, good stuff. Did Billy Gibbons have his open G tuning when he played Dust My Broom in Germany in 1980? I got to think back. I don't believe so. I think he's in standard tuning on that. They think they do it in E, and he just does. He's not playing slide on that. He's playing open tuning, a standard tuning. But I will show you a little trick that he does with that. Hold on. So the Dust My Broom lick. Let me just. It's usually in E, but the idea of that Dust My Broom thing is this, like that kind of riff, right? Well, I can show you on this. I actually learned this from Billy Gibbons, talking about getting the sound right by using your middle finger or using a finger and strumming upwards. It sounds like Traveling Riverside Blues by Zeppelin's version. So this up, right? If you're not used to doing it, you'll feel it in your fingertip. Just that's what you know. All right, doesn't Keith Richards hammer on, this is from Richard and Sarah. Bill Zamrick, Vestipol tuning is open E, I think. You could be totally right. I couldn't remember. Yeah, you could be right. I don't remember. I shouldn't have brought it up. This is Richard's question. Doesn't the standard Keith Richards hammer-on result as a major triad with the fifth in the bass? Some say it's a sus chord, for example. Yeah, sure. Right, well, that's what this one would be. Right, so that, this thing, it's a 4 chord with the fifth in the bass. C with G in the bass. Yep. But this one, that's a bit more sussy. But this one is a chord, a triad with the fifth in the bass, for sure. All right. Sorry, just getting to the questions, guys. Is there a scale length I prefer when I'm playing open tunings? Probably a little longer. It comes more down to me for string gauge. So if I play an open tuning on my Les Paul and I've got 10s on it, it feels a bit loose. This feels a bit loose. if I were going to play an open G all night, I would get a guitar with 11s on it. I think, because, I don't know, if I'm playing chords, I wouldn't care either way. I think I'm okay with this, with 10s, but if I were going to play slide, definitely not set up like this. But if I'm going to play open G all night, I would probably go to 11s. A little more tension, sounds a little cool and fuller. Okay, this is my knees hurt. I got a short scale bass recently. On my clip and tuner, it doesn't hear the low E string at the 12th fret. I don't know. Does it not hear this normal? I don't know. Is there a bass mode on a tuner? Maybe there's a bass mode. I don't know. I don't own a short scale, but when I use my regular bass, everything seems to be fine with that. All right. Where did I learn all this open tuning info? This is from Roy Lisbon. I'm a professional guitar player. I need to know these things, I'm a guitar nut. So I love the Stones, and I love Zeppelin, and I started hearing these tunes, and I was like, wow, this is open tuning, I need to know this, because there's no way you can get that sound properly. And I always wanted to learn how to play Can You Hear Me Knockin', which is one of my favorite tunes ever. And I just was like, I could never make it sound right until I found out it was an open tuning. Also, like I said, as a professional guitar player, it's my job to know these things. Can be like a plumber, somebody calls me up. I want to sound like Keith Richards. Boom, 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 how's this? And you start playing that, and they're like, yes, that's it. So that's a big part of it. Also, I play a lot of Delta blues. I went to a period where I played a lot of Delta blues on my old National, which I still do. I just do it as kind of a fun hobby because there's guys who are way better at it than me. And I do it for fun. And then the amount of time for me to get really, really great at that stuff would detract from the stuff I like to do more. So I look at open tunings and Delta stuff as, something else to do that I love the sound of. All right, keep on going. Have we seen a subtle telly before? I was not paying attention. Yeah, it's I have played this guitar before. Sometimes, in the live thing, depending, it's got throwback telly pickups in it. And so sometimes it can be a little noisy this time of day in my house. So that's one of those. Right? Don't forget this one, guys. I'm sorry, I talked about that, but this. It's bar cuffs the top 2 strings. That's that Delta. Right, that kind of sound. Okay, get you back into that when we do Delta stuff, but that sound. What Stones tune is that? It's that Black Cat. Oh. Starts off with that. I can't remember the title. I'm really bad with titles. Okay, so yeah, this is my Tuttle Telly. I've had this for a while. It's a chambered guitar. It's super light. He makes great stuff. I always love the tuxedo thing. So it's chambered. It's an alder body that's tuned, as Michael calls it. So it's really light, and it's a great rock and roll Telly. I actually don't own like a Telly, like a 50s sort of style. I had one that I sold a while ago to afford getting some other stuff. But this is a great rock and roll sounding Telly, as you guys can probably hear. Pretty rockin'. These are pretty high output. They're the 54. They're the broadcaster pickups from Throwback, and I think they sound pretty great. Right? And if I get a little more gain on that. So I really like that. Can you tell us what kind of picks you prefer? Yeah. This is Kenneth Daniels music. I use the Diodario Black Ice. They're like a jazz-sized pick. They're a little bit larger than a regular Jazz 3, which is, here's a regular Dunlop Jazz 3. And it's just that little bit bigger on the edges that I prefer it. I don't drop it as much. I sometimes used to drop the Jazz 3s. And I like the Ultex Jazz 3, and this is, I believe this is, I don't know what this, Delrin or something. It's nice and warm sounding, it's cool. The only thing I don't love about them is because they do scratch up fairly quickly, but you know, they're kind of inexpensive as picks go. It's part of the deal. You know what I mean? After playing one for a few days, I'm like, got little scratches in it. I get really crazy if I'm trying to play something mellow and I hear like, geek. So I just buy them by the bag, and price of doing business, right? Also, could you show us the positions for walking through G major again? Oh, like a G major scale, or the, I'm not sure what you mean, the G major chords, or the chords that we have in it. If we're talking about the chords in open G, sure. That would be the first one, open. That's like the 4 chord, that's C with the G in the bass. And this is that nice variation we can get. And a bit kind of sus sounding. What I like here, I'm being squirrely in a title and a name for that because you don't need it, it's that sound. Says the theory guy, but you know, sometimes you think about this stuff and you're like, it's just that. Especially when you hear a Stones tune, and you hear that, it's just that chord. So there's 3, 1, 2, 3, and then there's this one, which you hear in Can You Hear Me Knocking, and Give Me Shelter. All right, let's see if we go through. I got a top chat here. Thank you. Gary Martin, thank you very much for the top chat. I super appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay. Catching up with these questions here. All right, sorry, I jumped up with the questions. Every once in a while, the questions jump up, so I have to scroll through them. Kind of annoying. All right. Wow. A lot of questions. Do I normally recommend a Tele-style guitar for the sound? Well, if you want to sound like the Stones, yeah, sure. A Junior sounds great. Yeah, it's a P90. I just went to the Tele because it's the right scale, and all my Strats have floating tremolos. And plus, you know, it sounds more like the Stones. You know. Any tips for working out which open tuning? This is Matt Gibson. Hey, Matt, how's it going? Any tips for working out which open tuning something is in once you work out it's non-standard? Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. Yes, YouTube and Google, maybe that's the quickest question we have nowadays, quickest answer we can get. But when you start to play in open G for a while, there's a sound to it. You start to get to know the sound, because people play certain cliches, well, things that this key allows you to play in, or gives you, right? If I'm going to open D, right, it's a different sound. It's a lower sound. And there's things that it can give you that open G doesn't, like this. Right, so it's a bit of a different sound. So they are similar yet different. How's that for? That was a big tangent right there. I went to open D, excuse me. I would say, if you're really starting to get into open tunings, I would say, you know, to vary them. When I was working on the Delta Blues stuff, a lot of Delta stuff was in open G or open E or open D, those kind of tunings. So what I would do is I'd spend like a week in one, then go back and forth. Because, there's a lot of similarities in the fingerings, and we can talk about that stuff at another time, because we're almost out of time. See, the guitar freaks out when you go in those different tunings. All right. Would you like to talk a bit about this in the jam stuff on TrueFire? Sure. I like the in the jams. That's really, I just kind of play through stuff. You can mix in your own tracks. So a lot of in the jam tracks are the ones that are on my web page, on my Bandcamp, plus some more that you have. And the in the jam is cool because you can set your own mix. You can take out the guitar, you can turn up the guitar, and I give kind of a running commentary after the fact of what I played and how I played it, which I think is kind of fun. My main thing I love about those in the jams is that you can just play along with the drummer. You can create your own mix. So that's the fun thing about the in the jams. In terms of educational, I think they're fun in more like a commentary way. I think they tab the stuff out if I'm not mistaken, but it's more like when you're watching a movie and I could talk about, like, here I decided to do this to play against what the keyboard player is playing. So that's kind of fun about that. This is Richard again. Where is your pickup switch for this sound? It's kind of the amp setting, just the edge break it. Well, I can change it, but for the Stonesy stuff, I'm going to the bridge pickup because that's that sharper sound. All right. This is Thomas Moore. You get a great sound and video on your live streams. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was not done in a vacuum. Lots of friends helped me out. My friend Hermano Bonifazi has been invaluable with this. Super helpful. I wonder if Ronnie Wood tuned to some of those. Yeah, Ron Wood would also play in open tunings as well. Because you just watch their hands. That's when I figured out, like, what is he in? Oh, the Faces, too. A lot of Faces tunes are in open tunings, too. Because Ron Wood, it's that same kind of sound. So, and I believe there's some tunes where Ron Wood might stay in standard tuning and Keith plays in open, so they get that a little bit of that different sound with each other. Okay. Question, at what stage of the guitar improvement path do you think it's ideal to try different tunings? Have you to master standard tuning before moving in open tuning in order not to make confusion? That's a really good question. So when is it a good time to move to open tunings, and when is it a good time? Here's how I look at it. When I go to open tunings, it's for a reason. Like I want a particular sound. As a guitar player, one of the reasons why I shied away from getting more into slide playing and open tunings is I would have to really relearn the guitar. So when you have someone like Derek Trucks, who's amazing, he knows the guitar as it exists in open E tuning, if you know what I mean. Like, so he relearned everything. Joey Landreth, who I've had on my live shows, and Ariel Posen, and those guys just play guitar the way they've chosen to play the guitar in open C tuning, and they just have worked everything out as I would in standard tuning. Excuse me. So they've made that commitment to play the guitar that way. I didn't want to do that. So my slide playing is fairly rudimentary. It's based upon my slide lead playing is based upon Dwayne Allman. Not that Dwayne Allman's rudimentary, but he stuck to a standard open tuning. There's certain licks that I've stolen, and he was the first guy to get that sound. And then there's the guys like Sonny and Joey Landreth and Derek Trucks who've taken this thing to a whole other level. So for me, I kept it pretty basic because those guys exist, and I would never be that good at playing slide or in an open tuning. But to answer your question more directly, so when I go to an open tuning, I'm going to it because I know a bunch of shapes and sounds, and I like the way it is, and I might learn a tune and work through it. But I'm not going to invest the time to learn the instrument as well as I know it in standard tuning, if that makes sense. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so I would have avoided it first. I didn't get into it later, Keith Richards showed Beethoven and Mozart his open tuning back in the day. Oh, right. My knees hurt. Yeah, I don't think anyone masters guitar. Yeah, if you want, like, exactly, you're saying just jump into it and give it a shot. Yeah, give it a shot. If you want to start playing open tuning, just tune the guitar to open tuning and learn a Stones tune. That's the most fun. Like Roy Lisbon, the reason I asked that in the 70s, any tab or standard notation books didn't mention things about open tunings. The Rain Song, for example, was in standard tuning. Yes. Okay, so when I was coming up, all the books would just have the Rain Song written out by Zeppelin in standard tuning, and I believe that's in Dadgad, I think. D-A-D-G-A-D. Kashmir's in Dadgad. So, you never learned how to play it right. And then the Rain Song, I remember learning it with all this crazy fingering, and I'm like, well, it sounds kind of right. Then you learn it in the real tuning, and you're like, oh, there it is. So a lot of the early chord books, before tab became a real big thing, didn't have all the info, for sure. All right. Can you talk about Keith's rhythm style of playing just behind the beat? He's magic when he swings on tumbling dice. Hey, Neil Leahy, thanks so much for the top chat, Neil. Appreciate it. I can't talk about Keith's rhythm playing. It's a mystery to me as well. It's my favorite part of his guitar playing and everybody else's. You're totally right. Tumbling dice, the way he kind of sits on that, or happy. That intro, like that, the way he plays that is just so cool and happy and bouncy. It's just him. You just got to listen, and just try to copy it as best you can. It's almost like B.B. King's lead playing, which is time is so unique and difficult to nail that when I listen to B.B. King, I'm like, well, it's something like this time-wise, because I can't fit it on the grid. And with Keith, it feels kind of the same way. This rhythm guitar playing is so crazy good. All right, I wish I could answer that better for you. Is that a big muff over your left shoulder? That? No, it's a Gladio pedal? That one? Or that's a Klon. Okay. Roy, you feel cheated with some of these books back in there. I totally, man. Absolutely. Yeah. I totally felt cheated when you were like, I think, was the Robert Johnson book one of the early ones? I don't think they said he was an open G. Or they didn't say he was in a capo. Because you listen to Robert Johnson with his open G, but you listen to a lot of Robert Johnson stuff, and it's really high. Like you'll hear it sounds like he's in B flat. So of course the theory of the Robert Johnson stuff is twofold. I think Johnson just tuned to whatever. I don't think there was necessarily he was perfectly in G. He just kind of tuned roughly, so it could have been between G and A flat or something. Also, the other theory that I think actually holds some water is if you listen to the recordings, and Robert Johnson's voice is very high and the vibrato is quick, and same thing when he plays guitar, there's a fast vibrato. And if you just search on YouTube, like Robert Johnson retuned or slowed down, because the early recordings were on the acetate, so if you slow the Robert Johnson stuff down a little bit, maybe a whole step, it sounds more human. It doesn't have that same quality. It's still just as cool. Just try it. Search some of these out and hear his voice. You're like, wow, that actually sounds more like a person, and the guitar sounds a bit more like a guitar. And the pictures of Robert Johnson that exist, I've never seen any of them with a capo on it. Not that that means anything. But, I think that's a reasonable thing to think about, that maybe the recordings have been sped up a little bit over time, or recorded too fast or something. So I would definitely take a look at some of those. Those are a lot of fun, those retune videos. What the capo I'm using is the G7 capo. They're not inexpensive, but they're completely, totally awesome. So just drop it down, squeeze, and it's perfect. It gets the... I'm not, sometimes when you put the other ones, you get them, they're too tight and they pull the strings out of tune. This just does as hard as I push down, right? And what I love about this one is, which you can't do with other capos, is, I'm going to open tune. Sometimes they get really out of tune when you get up high on those with the capo. Watch. Right? Pretty cool. Right? So they can slide that up here. Okay. So thanks for everybody for being here. We got the hour. I'm trying to keep these in an hour. I can start talking forever. Meeting Man, I've heard what you're saying. RJ absolutely sounds more human when slowed down. Absolutely. I'm sold that that's the case. Is it Jerry Martin? Great lesson, Jeff. Massive Keith fan. Easier to play than Clapton or Beck. It gives you mere mortals hope and encouragement to continue playing. Oh, cool. That's awesome. I'm glad you dig it. Yeah, the capo is a G7 capo as a company. And that's the one. It's like the more modern kind of cool capo. There's other companies that make these. I just love this because you got a little lever that attaches, you know. It's really, I just love these. I'm totally sold on. After they started making them, I never got anything else. And when I first got one many, many years ago, it broke, fell apart. And I emailed the company, and the guy responded to me directly and sent me a replacement. Like, I got it within like 2 days. So, I don't know. For me, and none of them have ever broken since. They said they had a little problem with the first run, and I've had this thing forever. I've got about 4 of them, and they're just the best, in my mind. Okay. Roy Lisbon, thank you for your succinct answers. You have a most useful application-oriented succinct guitar channel I've found yet. I will spread the word. Hey, I really, really appreciate that. I'm trying to make it that, you know, like a guitar channel. We can all play guitar. We just take the time to do it. And try to make it about the guitar and less about, you know, infotainment kind of stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Just for me, I like talking about the guitar. Michael Cope, nice of you to show up. Okay. Do you listen and learn songs on YouTube, Spotify, or real CDs? Where do you listen to music these days? Thomas Moore. I'm mostly on, I have a boxes full of CDs in my basement, which I'm just like, oh. And there's some stuff that you can't get on iTunes, and it bugs me that I got to pay iTunes to get all the stuff. You know what I mean? But CDs are just a big pain. I just listen. I have an Apple Music subscription, and I don't listen to music on YouTube per se, unless it's like a bootleg, something that I can't find. I usually go, and if it's somebody I really like, you know, like. So like Robin, because he's my friend, I buy his records. I buy my friends' records. Michael Landau's new record, I just buy them because they make money directly. And I buy them through either like Bandcamp or their website, or I buy them on iTunes. So that's what I like to do. I do like to support the people. Now, having bought all the Pink Floyd records on vinyl and then again on CD, I am a little reticent to buy them again, if you know what I mean, because I've already bought them twice. So, but anybody I know is a guitar player trying to keep it going, I always buy their records, just because $10, and then they get the $10 or close to it. All right. So everybody, yeah, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for Phil, as usual, for the moderating and being the coolest. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting to post more individual videos, not just live stuff like this. You know, there's all these like YouTube algorithms that the channel, I'm trying to get more people to come to it, and people are saying like, oh, if you keep on streaming live as much, it lowers your numbers. So I have to start doing more individual videos, and I start doing that. And I'm just feeling, you know, what's going on. Working on a subscription channel coming over the next few months to get that rolling, get that launched. And working on a new course for Brett Papa as well, which is going to be a fusion course. Woo! You know, where my heart almost kind of sort of truly lives, bluesy, Jeff Becky, rock, fusion stuff. All right, thank you for everybody for being here. If you hit the tip jar, I really appreciate that. If you want to help out, the tip jar is a great way if you really appreciate the channel and all the people who have hit the top chat. Thank you. And All my courses are available at TrueFire at 20% off through my website if you use the code LIVE25. And yeah, there you go. So thanks everyone. I will see you all next week.